Welcome to Tacuma Talks episode 2, where under 10 minutes you get the perspective on world events, current events from a credentialed media member. Now, I won't tell you where I work for, whom I work for, but if you do your Googles, you'll be able to find that out. So, in under 10 minutes, there are two things that I want to talk about. The first is a dirty curse word. So, let me tell you this. Let's set a scenario for you. Let's just say that I'm looking to start a league, a business. I want to make this business the best business in the world. I want it to be marketable. I want it to be relevant to everybody watching because my goal is to attract the most eyeballs, the most customers, the most people buying merchandise. So let's do a brief history lesson. Back in the days when I was coming up, the NBA that I knew, the biggest basketball association in existence right now that I knew, featured predominantly players from America. They came from places like Harlem, New York. They came from the south side of Chicago. They came from Compton, California, in the Los Angeles area. They came from French Lick, Indiana, and places like that, urban and middle America. But then something changed. Something changed in the early 90s in the form of the Dream Team. That meant that kids from all over the world had the opportunity to see Michael Jordan. They had the opportunity to see Charles Barkley, Magic Johnson, players like that. And then that's when the NBA began to exert a more global influence. So we're not just talking about kids from these American locales. We're talking about kids now from countries, from continents like Africa, Australia, Europe, places like that, who become interested in basketball. And so now, in this new iteration of a basketball league, the NBA, the one that I want to replicate and build and be better than, I now have to recruit from all over the world and not just one particular kind of American player. So I have to go to these countries and continents to find these players, right? Now I have to go to Slovenia, Toronto, Serbia, Athens, Greece, places like that to get the best players in the world now, right? Because again, if I want to create the best kind of business, my goal is to attract the most eyeballs. And by doing that, I'm gathering the most diverse perspectives. I'm including more people. I want to give the players of my league an equitable stage to be able to broadcast their talents. That is what business is in the 21st century. That's how I stay competitive because if I keep to just Harlem or the South Side or South Central Los Angeles or some cornfield and some cornfield in Indiana or some rural area in Indiana or Iowa or Nebraska or places like that, I'm limiting my ability to attract top talent. Numerically, I'm confining myself to a certain type of player, right? So, what do we have now, right? Um, right now, I mentioned places like Slovenia, Toronto, Athens, Greece, Sombor, Serbia, and even Akron, Ohio, right? When we think of the NBA today, who do we have from those places, right? From Serbia, we have Nikola Jokic, the triple double machine from the Denver Nuggets. If we're talking about Slovenia, we have Luka Doncic, who's now with the Lakers, one of the best players in the league. If we're talking about Toronto, Ontario, Canada, we're talking about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, one of the best players in the league and an MVP candidate. If we're talking about Athens, Greece, we're talking about Giannis for the Milwaukee Bucks, right? This is what globalization looks like. This is what DEI, that curse word that I mentioned at the top of this segment, why it's so important, because you need it in order to compete in the 21st century. So, my question to you in the comments is, why is DEI such a bad thing? Why is, if I'm starting a business, if I want the best kind of company, why wouldn't I, in my recruiting process, include pull from the most diverse sources to get the best talent, to include their voices and give them an equitable stage to increase my profitability and theirs, as well as their exposure? Why is that a bad thing? Why have we come to look at this in negative terms? I want to hear what you think, and I would love to get your perspective on that question. Why is DEI a bad thing? Welcome back, everyone. One of my favorite events of the year, sporting events, is the NFL draft. It's where, and I'm a big football fan, my team, your team, all 32 teams get to add more talent to their roster. So I'm so excited because my team right now is downtrodden. We need as much talent as possible. We just need a lot of help. But I want to talk about perhaps the most polarizing figure right now in the NFL offseason. It's former University of Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders, son of Deion Sanders. And now this young man seems to be causing quite a stir among people. About 2 weeks ago, Shedeur appeared at the NFL Combine, of which he didn't work out, but he gave he gave media members a chance to ask him questions. When the brother appeared on the podium, he had the backwards cap, he had the two shiny, radiant diamond gold chains. I mean, he was like the epitome of wealth, the epitome of confidence, and he is everything I think that sports media, certain sports media members are not used to. Wow. So what happened when he was at the combine? Well, he took meetings with teams. He is in consideration to be a top 5 or a top 10 pick to be a quarterback for a team, right? So these NFL teams are interviewing with him during the combine. So here's what happened. When he did these interviews, there were reports that emerged that said that he was arrogant, that said he was brash, that said he was full of himself, that said he was unprofessional. And I'm like, wow, where are these comments really coming from? I mean, they must really can't stand Shedeur Sanders or his dad, Deion, who was perhaps the most flamboyant NFL athlete of all time, and certainly one of the best NFL athletes of all time, considering that Deion is a Hall of Famer. Why hasn't more media members talked about the influence of his dad, who's present in his life, who is the standard of football excellence? Why aren't they talking about that influence on Shedeur? And so I thought about it. I thought about what the NFL draft is. You know, Shedeur will be a featured member of the NFL draft. But typically, when we see the draft, when we hear of these players who are being hired to play football for these professional teams, a lot of them come from downtrodden circumstances. I'm talking about a father in jail, a mother on drugs. Maybe this player was raised by his grandparents because both parents are deceased. Some really hard circumstances, right? Which makes you marvel at how these players are able to, come from such tough circumstances to be at the top of their sport. There's a certain kind of gumption, discipline, toughness, and talent that you need to be able to do that. Those guys are literally one of one, and they deserve all the accolades in the world for what they've accomplished. But you see, the thing about Shedeur that I think gets under people's skin is that he comes from none of those circumstances. This young man is wealthy, not only because his dad is an NFL Hall of Famer and has made millions of dollars in his career. Shedeur himself was one of the most highly paid athletes in college under the name, image, and likeness or ordinance that had paid amateur football players money based on their name, image, and likeness. He was estimated at somewhere around $6 million. That's the most of any college athlete. So he's already wealthy. He has a father in his life. He comes from a stable background. At least that's what it looks like. So Shedeur represents the departure. And from my point of view, it doesn't seem like certain media members know how to handle the fact that this young man comes from privilege. He's confident. He's very skilled in what he does. He's himself. He's very comfortable with himself. And he's not afraid to talk about what he can do. That's confidence. And for this particular type of confidence coming from this package, it seems to me, based on those NFL Combine reports and what we'll hear down the road these next few weeks about Shedeur, that certain people have a problem with who he is. He's not the typical story. He's not the typical narrative. What do you think? I'd love to get your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining me, for spending these 10 minutes or so with me. I wish you a great week. Stay strong.